Well, Wes, we've had a couple of questions about Hot Relocation, which is a feature of Storage Foundation. Can you explain it a little bit to us?
Absolutely.
Great.
All right. First of all, understand that Hot Relocation only works for redundant volumes. If you have a failure on a non-redundant volume, don't expect Hot Relocation to come in and save the day. Okay? So its main purpose is to restore the redundancy of a redundant volume when you have a disk failure. We used to have something called hot spare checking. It's actually, I think it's still available, but nobody ever uses it anymore. It's disk for disk replacement, and that's not what this is. This is sub-disk to sub-disk replacement. So what I have here in this diagram is a disk group that contains 10 disks, and I have 3 volumes. 2 redundant volumes, one mirrored, one RAID 5, and then a non-redundant volume. And in this mirrored volume, I have 2 plexes in green, 2 sub-disks in blue, and the disk space for these sub-disks are coming from these 2 disks, so kind of keep it color coordinated. On the RAID 5 set, I have 3 sub-disks where the disk space is coming from these 3 disks. And on my stripe volume, they're coming from these 3 disks. Okay? So, in the event of a disk failure, so let's kill one of these disks, say that disk there fails, which means I lost this disk space that houses this sub-disk. And this is coming from here, so I essentially lose this entire plex. The plex will be detached from the volume, but the volume is still fine, still running, still active, I/O still going to and from, because we have a valid copy of our data in the remaining plex. But now we're in a volatile situation here. If we lost this disk, we lose the volume, and now we're down. So Hot Relocation will come into play because this is a redundant volume and replace the disk space from this failed disk, this Dell failed disk here, and replace this sub-disk from other disks in the same disk group. Now, if we have hot spare disks, so I have 2 hot spare disks here designated as hot spares for Hot Relocation to use, and if there's enough space on those, then what Hot Relocation will do is create a sub-disk on there on the same parameters, size of this sub-disk, and then do an atomic copy synchronization from the good plex here to this sub-disk, and then bring it up to speed. As soon as it's fully synchronized, this becomes my redundant copy of this data, and we'll still have 2 plexes in here, but this plex has disk space coming from this disk, this plex has disk space coming from this disk. Okay? And now we are redundant. So we restored our integrity and redundancy to the volume. Now, Hot Relocation prefers hot spare disks, but what if you don't have hot spare disks in your disk group, or there's not enough space in a hot spare disk to create the total sub-disk size? Well, now Hot Relocation can use a combination of disk space in a hot spare and space on other available disks in that disk group. So it doesn't have to create a sub-disk in one chunk. It can create small chunks of space. Say I take 2 pieces of disk space here, concatenate those together to equal this whole size, and then this becomes my replacement sub-disk. So the data will be spread across here, synchronized. Of course, this one's, we're no longer using that one anymore. So this becomes my replacement. So essentially, I have, that's from that one, and that's that one. That will be my total space for my sub-disk, and that's what's going to be used in this plex. Synchronization will now be this way, so it's basically copying to these 2 disks, and now I have 1 sub-disk here, 2 sub-disks here concatenated together, but the plexes will be equal in size. Now, if I have a stripe here, and one of these disks fails, let's say this disk right here failed. Since this is a non-redundant volume, the disk, or the volume, goes down. There's no redundancy in it, no recovery from it. So it is down. Have good tape backups. Okay? So the only replacement for this is to rebuild the volume restore from backup. VxRelockD is the daemon that manages this, and it will also send you an email, send root or administrator an email about the event that occurred, pass or fail, to let you know what happened. And there you have it. That's Hot Relocation.
Fantastic. So this is something that happens automatically with Storage Foundation, right?
Absolutely. It's on by default.
Fantastic.
Or it comes online when the system comes up.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Wes, thanks for taking us through Hot Relocation. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.